Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the absolute foundational element of any good manufacturing practice system, and that is the people and the organizational structure. Before we even think about complex machinery, raw materials, or cleanroom airflow, we really have to talk about human beings. So let's get right into Lesson 1, Organization and Personnel. It's a pretty sobering fact, but regulators, inspectors, and global recall statistics all agree on one thing. Most quality failures trace right back to people. Insufficient training, unclear roles, or maybe just poor discipline. These are the most common root causes behind quality failures. That makes human behavior our ultimate frontline defense. Think about it. You could have the most advanced, high-tech facility in the world, but if the folks running it aren't organized and trained properly, the whole system just falls apart. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 5 critical pillars: the human element, the independent quality unit, clear roles and training, hygiene and gowning, and finally, visitors and audits. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the human element, and how we establish a real culture of accountability. So there are 4 absolutely non-negotiable pillars for any GMP employee. First up, you must be trained. And by that I mean every single operator is trained to the specific procedures they're actually expected to follow. Second, you must be qualified. In the GMP world, role competence is assessed and documented. It is never just assumed based on a fancy resume. Third is accountability. Literally every single action taken in a facility has to be traceable to a specific, named individual. And finally, healthy. Your personal health and hygiene are absolutely critical to preserving the integrity of the product. Moving right along to Section 2, let's look at the independent quality unit and structural checks and balances. Think about the natural tension that's built into any manufacturing facility. Production inherently wants to balance yield, speed, and cost, right? They want to get the product made efficiently. Quality decisions, on the other hand, balance absolutely none of those things. Quality has to remain completely objective, focusing only on safety and specifications. So that pressure from production to release a batch, it must never, ever override those specifications. Because of that inherent tension, and to avoid catastrophic conflicts of interest, the quality unit has to have uncompromising authority. They need to be an independent body with a direct line to senior management. The quality unit has the absolute authority to approve or reject all active pharmaceutical ingredients, procedures, and change controls. And perhaps most importantly, they hold the veto power. They can step in and halt production immediately if safety or quality is at risk, and operations simply cannot overrule them. Now, a quick aside for those of you operating under European frameworks. It's really vital to recognize specific named roles required by law that fit into this structure. You've got the qualified person, or QP, who personally certifies a batch release for the EU market. Then there's the responsible person, who is the named individual accountable for the storage and wholesale dealing of the product. These aren't just fancy job titles, folks. They are legally binding responsibilities. All right, on to Section 3. Clear roles and training, and how we actually document individual competence. If there's one thing regulators absolutely hate, it's ambiguity. Any gaps or overlaps in responsibilities have to be resolved way before an inspection happens. You need a solid suite of documents to ensure everyone knows exactly what their job entails. We're talking clear, written job descriptions detailing your title, reporting line, and tasks. You need a current, dated organizational chart. You've got to have a delegation record, basically who steps in when you're absent and for exactly how long, plus up-to-date training records, and a signature log to verify both handwritten and electronic signatures. The crucial takeaway here is that training is a strict GMP requirement. It is definitely not a nice to have. Imagine an inspector hitting you with this very common question. Show me the training record for the operator who ran this batch against the revision of the SOP in force that day. Regulators aren't just going to ask if someone was trained. They will dig deep into exactly who did what, and if they were trained on the specific revision of the standard operating procedure that was actually live on the exact day that batch was run. So training isn't just a one-and-done deal. It's a continuous journey. It starts right on day 1 with initial GMP onboarding, which absolutely must happen before you do any independent work. Then it moves into job-specific training on your exact SOPs. But it doesn't stop there. You're required to complete periodic refreshers and immediately train on any new SOP revisions. And every step of the way, this competence has to be rigorously verified, whether that's by a written test, direct observation, or official sign-off. Which brings us to Section 4, hygiene and gowning.
the physical execution of GMP.
You have to remember your physical health literally impacts product integrity. This is why strict personnel hygiene policies exist. You must provide health declarations upon hire and periodically after that. You have to proactively report any illnesses to management. We can never have untreated illness near the product. You must wear clean, appropriate clothing. Absolutely no eating or drinking in production areas, so finish that coffee outside. And you must completely avoid cosmetics and jewelry in classified environments. When it comes to aseptic manufacturing, executing a drilled sequential gowning procedure perfectly is one of the highest leverage actions you can possibly take. It's a strict 5-step process. Step 1, a thorough hand wash and dry. Step 2, you move to the chain room following a strictly defined flow. Step 3 is donning your personal protective equipment in a very exact order: hood, mask, suit, gloves, then boots. Step 4 is verifying there is zero skin exposure, using a full-length mirror or a buddy check. Only after all that, in Step 5, do you actually enter the airlock to the classified area.
Finally, let's cover Section 5, Visitors and Audits, and how we secure the perimeter.
Outsiders, like visitors and external contractors, introduce a massive wildcard to controlled environments. That's exactly why they have to receive a GMP and site-specific briefing before they even step foot inside. They must remain chaperoned by a trained employee at all times. They've got to stick to strict access logs detailing their exact purpose and time on site. Crucially, they follow the exact same PPE and gowning requirements as you do. Their access is limited strictly to what their visit requires, and photography, that is highly controlled or just outright prohibited.
Now, what makes an auditor's ears perk up when they evaluate personnel? They're looking for specific red flags. A massive one for global regulators is finding out that training records are not current. Catching an operator running a batch on a superseded SOP revision is a huge failure. Another critical hallmark of a failing system is discovering that key personnel lack job descriptions or, and this is a big one, finding out that the quality unit actually reports into production, completely destroying their independence.
So how do we bulletproof the system and prevent those audit flags? Facilities have to implement robust mitigations. This means constantly reconciling training matrices with the most current SOP revisions and reviewing those written job descriptions annually. Management has to ensure the quality unit reporting line is elevated all the way up to the senior board level. Lastly, facilities should be conducting daily sample audits of cleanroom gowning and using software systems that actually block an operator from doing the work until all their training prerequisites are 100% complete.
Let's wrap this explainer up with a quick self-audit and our key takeaways. If you remember nothing else, remember this: GMP is entirely built on people who are qualified, trained, and accountable. The quality unit absolutely must be independent from production to preserve objective decision-making. Every single responsibility must be written down and kept current. Remember that training is never a one-time event, it's a continuous loop. Your personal hygiene directly preserves product integrity. And finally, the rules apply to everyone. Visitors and contractors follow the exact same procedures as the permanent staff.
I'll leave you with this one crucial question to chew on. Why must the quality unit be entirely independent of production? Well, as we've seen, it's because production naturally has to balance speed and cost, but quality must focus solely on safety. Ensuring the quality unit cannot be overruled by operations is the ultimate objective safeguard for patient safety. Think about how your own role supports that independence, and we'll see you in the next explainer.